Yep. All right. Let's call this meeting to order. This is the Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee, Thursday, February 11th, 2021. It is a little after 5:09. Sorry. Roll call, please, Ms. Lauren.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Mr. Talbot?
Here.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Gurley?
Here. All right, item 2, new business, review and discuss and recommendations of ordinances. A, discuss of section 125-27, driveways, culverts, and or subsurface drainage. So, originally, I think we went and changed it to where we wanted every subsurface drainage to come to us first, and under review. I think we're leaning toward letting Public Works do that. I know Mr. Talbot has some thoughts on the subject, so go ahead, Mr. Talbot.
Well, initially, I proposed it, and I probably didn't think, I think the intent was good, and I think we probably had a little flaw. We originally wrote the ordinance in a manner that if a subdivision wasn't designed for subsurface, that you couldn't put it in. And then we have people, they want to go put it in, they ask them, well, how can I do it? Well, contact your councilman. And so it ended up, and Randy's talked about it before, and I tend to agree with him. Sometimes we end up doing things that belong to the administration because we write an ordinance in such a manner, and then people want to know how to get around it. And when you start looking at individual things, you go, well, that kind of makes sense, or that, whatever. Mm-hmm. So my thought process has been, and Mr. Girlinghouse helped me along, with this thing in thinking that in lieu of us giving waivers, to allow that, let's put this on Department of Public Works or the Gravity Drainage District or the state of Louisiana, and basically say that if it wasn't designed for subsurface drainage, that the Department of Public Works, or whoever's responsible for the ditch that culvert's going in, makes the determination that putting subsurface in that ditch will not negatively impact the flow of water. Right. And so, typically, except for a few exceptions, every ditch that we have some control over culvert going in is a parish road. So basically, the only people that will really be involved in this situation will be DPW. And we've talked to the director of DPW, we've talked to Mr. DiGirolamo, and he feels that there's been enough time passed and his people have done enough evaluations on this thing that I think they feel comfortable in taking that on. And that gets us out of the administration of determining whether somebody can or can't. The only other option is to tell everybody that wants to get subsurface that you got to go hire an engineer and have a drainage impact study done, and that becomes cost prohibitive, and I think the pushback on that would be tremendous. So I think that's the reason that and I think this 2A exhibit that Miss White has White has put together for us kind of addresses that. Am I correct, Lauren? This is the ordinance as amended, and that's what it kind of says?
This is what it says, yes. So this is every place that says that subsurface is prohibited.
That basically says that it's going to require DPW to, or does it say DPW? Or
looks like it's just taking out the prohibitions, and so we need to put something in there that says, what do you think? Because I think all it's doing, isn't that correct?
This is how it currently is.
Yeah,
so
but you got it.
So you need to add into it.
Must be done by DPW or
okay, so basically it looks like that we need to go down to 1357A, right? And say, installation of subsurface drainage is prohibited in each subdivision designed for an open ditch unless an evaluation has been done by the agency responsible for that ditch. And they feel that
Or agencies.
Agency,
if they're in a
could be
it could be in a T in the front. Yeah,
it could be
right.
multiple.
Yeah.
Agencies responsible, determine that there will be no negative impact.
Yep.
That sounds
And
right.
I think that in itself will address the prohibition and stop us from having to give waivers every time somebody wants to put a culvert in a subsurface.
Well, then they gotta come to us, and then they gotta wait, and then they gotta do something.
That 1357 is this top one, so if you read what it has before,
Yeah.
Okay.
The ODS engineers shall plan all drainage for the project in accordance with the master drainage plan. That,
that's what it says.
until such time that a master drainage plan is adopted, which we have, the ODS engineers shall utilize sound engineering practices and the criteria specified in this chapter. Subdivisions shall be designed for either open ditches or enclosed conduit systems. And then the omission part is installation of subsurface drainage is prohibited in any subdivision designed for open ditches. Yeah, I think we need to reword that completely.
Well, I mean, the problem is that that section affects everything.
Yeah,
And we're not trying to affect everything. We basically added the installation of subsurface drainage is prohibited in each subdivision designed for open ditches.
Right.
Yeah.
That was what we added when we did that ordinance, right? So we're not wanting to eliminate
yeah,
the fact that it's prohibited. What we want to say is it's prohibited unless the agency or agencies responsible for the maintenance of that ditch determines
that it has zero.
that has no negative impact on
I
on the
get
flow of
that.
water.
Yeah. I got
And
you.
then if we add that to the backside of that sentence, then that takes the waiver out of us. It takes that off the agenda. It takes every time
Yep.
somebody wants one in our district to come make the
Dang, I
evaluation.
sure like going and having a look at all that.
It puts the onus
Yeah, I know
back
you-
on
well,
DPW.
And it also puts somebody in front of it who really knows what they're looking
Right.
at.
Right, and Junior in my
'Cause I don't.
district, in Frog's district, has been doing a great job going to look at it. Because if he goes
Yeah.
out and says, got enough fall, big enough, you put a big enough culvert, I'm good with that in
Same thing
there.
with Gravity 5. They're not trying to hold anybody up, but they really don't want to allow something
But
that's gonna make it
that
worse.
still doesn't, that is about the installation of culvert. So basically, we're saying that still doesn't impact this.
Okay.
That by saying the agency or agencies responsible still have to, make the evaluation. If you're in Gravity 1 or Gravity 2, as this other ordinance is written, then they have to sign off on the installation. But that really, if I'm not mistaken, does that apply to everything, or does that only apply to?
I think it's only if they want to fill in their ditches.
Okay, so yeah, it would apply to this, but I think when we say agency or agencies have to make the evaluation, that if it's in Gravity 1 or Gravity 2, they've got to be included in that deal.
Who's gonna determine that, DPW?
Yeah, we need to do a little rewording, because we said agency or agencies responsible for the cleaning of that, maintaining of that ditch, and Gravity 1 and Gravity 2 is asked that they pre-authorize the culverts in their area. So we gotta
Even
figure,
on the road ditches?
let's leave it as it's worded, let's don't address the Gravity 1, Gravity 2 thing. We'll get a clarification on what the intent of this other deal was. I thought it was related only to their ditches. I didn't think that really applied to roadside.
Because they couldn't really.
But roadside does negatively impact the drainage that.
Of the laterals.
I mean,
yeah.
in theory, if a subdivision developed in 1 or 2, they sign off on all the drainage inspections.
Period, yeah.
So if they have signed off on one and then we're allowing it to be amended, we probably need to let them look. Let's introduce it tonight with the wording that agency or agency is responsible for the maintenance. And then we'll talk to Gravity 1 and 2 about this, and we can always
The engineer
amend
for
it.
one may be here tonight.
We can always amend it at the public hearing, or we can amend it tonight before introduction.
Okay, yeah, that works.
So, I mean, I'll make that motion that's how we're gonna do it. Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
So in all three of the highlighted sections, you want that wording added?
Yeah, well, wait a second. Yeah, every one of those that prohibits the subsurface drainage should quantify it, that if the agency or agencies responsible for maintenance have to sign off, and then we'll figure out how Gravity 1, Gravity 2 plays into it with respect to all subsurface, and we might have to make a clarification. But we'll get that figured out before we vote on it in 2 weeks.
Right.
Sounds good.
All right, motion by Mr. Talbot, Second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Harris. All in favor, say aye.
All right. That one's-
I said aye. You didn't hear it?
I'm good, I'm good. You know I'm
Next
good.
item.
We,
A, B. Discussion is section 50-13, littering.
Scooter started this.
That's what I was gonna say. Mr. King?
Well, Scooter brought it, I'll talk about this for a second. Scooter brought the original problem to the board, to the committee.
Mm-hmm.
We worked as a committee for several meetings and worked, and the ladies in the office worked with the parish attorney to fix our ordinance so that it mirrored state law. And when it was presented to the council felt that it empowered certain individuals to do certain things. We still have an ordinance that conflicts with state law. If we don't want to fix it, we ought to just repeal it. We shouldn't have an ordinance on the books that is in direct conflict with the way state law is written. So I didn't really have I thought the ordinance that we developed was good. I don't have an issue with the fact that it got beat. I just feel for us to continue to leave an ordinance on the books that
not enforceable.
that conflicts with state
Yeah.
law and isn't enforceable. And ultimately, if it's challenged, we'll then have to defend with no ability to win. I just think in good business, and I think we ought to just repeal the whole ordinance as it exists and and move forward.
Well, you all know there are probably, to some degree or another, there are probably 100 ordinances that do not line up with state law.
I agree.
So I understand in a perfect world, we'd like to get rid of all those. You know, we'd like to make everything line up and become everything with true with state law as possible. But in doing so, in this particular case, as we've said before, the constables have the right to write litter tickets now.
yeah.
They do. Without proper training, because none of them have it, or at least as far as I know, I'll safely say most don't have it.
Yeah, let's say
Most
that.
don't have it without proper vehicles. And I'm talking about a vehicle where you know you're being
Most
pulled
don't have it.
over.
Yeah.
Most don't have, let's say all of them probably don't have it. And a willingness to do so.
Yeah.
I think that until you get that mechanism in place, state law, I think state law is written for you're talking about organizations that, well, I mean, they are funded in a way that they have those vehicles, they have that training. You know, I talked to a constable in Fort Worth. Those guys, you know, they're trained.
They're in all the right,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right.
they are trained, and
I get
they have
all
a
that.
funding mechanism in place. They have vehicles that look like law enforcement, and once again, they're all post certified. They all know how to approach a vehicle if you pull someone over, and those are just a few of my concerns. You know, the bigger concern is when you take agencies that don't really have that much funding outside of, I guess, what's granted to them by state statute,
We pay it.
and we pay it. You're right. Then now you're giving them another mechanism in place to where they know there's like 1 degree of separation. They write this ticket, it goes to the JOP, and then
That's it.
that's it. And that concerns me, and it should concern you. I mean, and I also have a problem with the fact that you give any constable anywhere in the parish-wide carte blanche. So, and I'm not saying these things will happen. I'm just saying,
No, no.
look at this
Maybe.
overhead.
Yeah.
If you are elected in a certain one area, don't you think there would be, let's say, it's somebody there might be a idea to like go write tickets
Wherever.
everywhere else but your district?
Yeah.
And
so you get money
So-
and you don't have to.
and I'm not
let
saying-
people
look,
back. I know what
To
you're
be
saying.
clear, I'm
I
not
get
saying
that.
that's gonna happen, I'm
Right.
not saying that will happen, but I could see we're creating a situation where that would happen. I just don't wanna put people who are untrained, they don't have the right equipment, and untrained being the most important thing, don't have the right equipment, and you give them a green light. Now, if they can do it on their own, right now,
Mhm.
we can't stop them, state law says they can do it. That's it. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Talbert. If you just say it like that, it sounds like we should just go ahead and pull this off, but I'm not gonna be responsible
I
for
mean,
some.
we can leave it in place, it just doesn't make sense for it to be there.
Well,
It doesn't matter one way or
but as it
another.
is
It's
right
same
now,
like state law,
but we
so.
know, if it is right now, if they write a ticket, which I would, look, I know we have a littering problem, but like I've told
Yeah.
you, I don't think this is gonna put any kind of dent in it.
No.
And we have other avenues to approaching this, but as it is right now, if they do write a ticket, it goes to the 21st Judicial. And then the money is spread out and trickled around to where, you know, it goes back to the parish as a whole and not to, you know, not to one area. Like if, I don't know, I'll just use something, if the constable over of Albany, I don't know who that is, but, so Constable of Albany, don't get mad if I use an example here, but, he goes and writes a ticket in Denham, well then, that money, he has to go to court in Albany, and the money stays in Albany. You know, you're gonna, then you got constables that are gonna, they're driving out and around looking for people actually littering,
Well, I'm
which
looking
I
at
also
busy
say is
enough
very
where they're
hard
not
to
able to
see.
go out and
You don't
do
see
that
a lot of
already,
people
but,
writing
yeah.
tickets. You don't see, I don't really see now,
I don't see
I do,
any
it happens, but I don't see anybody littering. And I know you say you have recently and all that, but you know, it's few and far between, especially if you're in a marked vehicle, they're not gonna do it. They're not gonna do it in front of you. That we have a littering problem. I just question, the effectiveness of it. What are we creating when we put our stamp of approval on something where you have people going out untrained in vehicles that aren't marked? Like I've said, I've told my daughters, do not pull over. If somebody in a
He's going, hey,
a
flashing your
2005
lights,
Kia Sophia tries to pull you over, you keep going. You keep going. You go to a police station, you go somewhere, and then there's the part we don't really think about where they might get into exchange. These people might be doing something that, you know, the littering is the least of their laws.
Yeah.
And you have untrained police officers or untrained constables approaching these vehicles. And I was at one time post-certified. I went through the training, and I can tell you, there's a science to it. And if you just don't walk up to the vehicle and go, hey, driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, what's going on, here's what you did. No, it's a lot more than that. I mean, they assess every situation in great detail and how they approach the vehicle. You know, do I approach from the driver's side? Do I approach from the passenger side? Do I not approach at all? Make him get out and come to me. All those things I learned when I was going through my certification. If you haven't been through that, then you don't know it.
Right.
And so, the long story short.
If you remember back, before I was on the Ordinance Committee, I was approached by Jason Arnold. He said, Scooter, we gotta do something about this littering. I need you to see if you can get signage put up across the parish and get the ordinance written so that we can enforce it. He said, right now, the one we have, we can't enforce. So, we need to make sure and get that done. If the ordinance on the books isn't even enforceable by our sheriff properly, we gotta fix it. Now, because if that's their duty and they're gonna take that on and wanna do it, apparently he does, because that's what he told me. You know, he would have said, hey, let's just put some signs up and hope they quit. You know, well, where are we willing to work on an ordinance that says, you know, Sheriff, this is what you want? I think even Alden talked to us about it way back. I'm talking about, I came and spoke about it probably 3 years ago. Maybe 4 years ago.
Look, we need to do something to make the parish cleaner.
Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, I've already said, mandatory parish-wide garbage pickup.
Right.
I mean, every municipality, well, I know Walker has it, Denham has it.
The
Livingston
number one
has it.
thing on Facebook today you would have thought was drainage. Number one thing was how much garbage they're seeing floating along our roads because
Yeah.
of bad
Oh,
drainage.
yeah.
You know,
Look,
it makes it noticeable, everything floats.
Well, I understand.
I think we need
I
to
just
have
think,
the administration do a parish-wide, hire a contractor to clean this parish.
I mean,
And then-
clearly
but
this
we
is
gotta
gonna-
have some way to keep it that way.
I understand that. And I
It'll
think-
take several things.
I think that will do it, but, I think that,
Okay.
we're at an impasse on this. I mean, it's gonna
Okay.
go to
Look,
the council anyway, so.
Well, here's the deal. I understand. I do not disagree with a lot of the stuff you had to say. All I'm saying is that if Mr. Avery, the justice, I mean, the constable in Watson chooses to write a ticket, okay? And the JP chooses to hold litter court. And then they send the check. They have the fine sent to the parish. It's in direct conflict with this ordinance. But if we choose to fight that, I mean, I think Mr. Moody will tell us, we're indefensible. We have no ability to do that. So whether this ordinance is on the books or not, they can follow state law, and we can't stop it. So my point is, why put Mr. Moody in a position? And we can wait till it happens. I'm fine with that. But I think ultimately you're getting ready to have a position where a JP in the parish is gonna write a ticket. I mean, a constable in the parish is gonna write a ticket, and a JP gonna hold traffic court. And Ms. Myers is set up to collect the fines because that's what state law says. And they're gonna send the fine to her, and somebody's not gonna like it because it's against parish ordinance, but Mr. Moody's not gonna be able to defend our parish ordinance. So I'm going to put this on the back burner. I'm just thinking that before we get to a point that we're having to defend something that's in violation of state law, that we ought to just scrub it from the books, either fix it or get rid of it. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just trying to be a little proactive that we tried to fix the ordinance and bring it in line with state law, and we didn't want to do that.
And
That
it
we
failed.
should eliminate the ordinance that's in conflict.
I mean-
Or we should lobby the state legislature
And change the
to
state
change
law.
the statute so that other justices of the peace and other constables aren't able to do it. And I don't know the success of that, but there's obviously a reason that law exists the way it is. So, look, I'm
I
not,
think that most constables, or a lot of constables,
well,
go through a proper training procedure.
well,
I mean, I can just say this, I'm not comfortable giving that authority over to someone and then
But
putting
it's already
themselves.
there. That's the problem. That's what he's
Well-
saying. It's already there.
Well,
So-
I mean, but, okay, then vote to do it, I'm not gonna.
well, look, I'm not gonna fall on the sword over this. I just wanted to
Yeah.
I wanted to put it forward that it's something we probably ought to do. If the feeling of this, committee is not, I don't even care, we don't even have to
We don't have to
introduce,
pull
we
it
don't
out.
even have to
Yeah.
introduce it tonight. I just thought that since the thought process was to reject fixing it, and they wouldn't want to do that the abolition of the ordinance wouldn't be an
the
issue.
best way.
But if we don't want to do that too, I'm fine with it. I'm just saying that this ordinance, as it exists, is indefensible in court, and if we wrote somebody a ticket under it, and
They challenge.
I think that they could challenge it, and, we couldn't even make them do what the ordinance says because it's in conflict with state law. But, look, that's how I feel. I'm not gonna offer a motion. I don't think it's
No,
good to
no,
offer a
I'm
motion.
not either. How do you feel on that? I mean, you wanna just wait on it, or?
I'd like to wait on it.
Okay.
I'd like to know how many constables actually go out and write tickets.
Probably none.
I mean, I don't think any are at this point in
Well,
time.
when they came to us and spoke to us at the
Which-
ordinance committee, they said the reason they're not writing tickets is because the parish had told them we're not accepting fines. So we asked Miss Jennifer if she would do that. She said, absolutely, it says that I have to, so yeah. And so now, I don't know if any have been written since then. I hadn't contacted the JP or the constable since then. to see if they've started doing it now that there's a way to collect it. You know,
Okay.
so,
All right, so let's just table this.
okay, that's fine.
All right.
All right, old business.
Oh, Lord, this is.
Review, discuss, and recommendation of ordinances. A, discussion of Article 4, utilities, installations, and right-of-way. What's wrong?
There is no 4 in the, oh, 3A, I'm sorry, I'm thinking 4,
Yeah,
okay.
item 3A, yeah.
Okay. So we currently, oh, go ahead, Tracy.
No, you got it.
We currently, and look, this is the transition, is kind of why this is going on. We had Sam, come on up, you're part of this, you kind of spurred this on. This is the utility notification ordinance we're talking about. We had that meeting 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. We had a meeting, we talked about problems that the parish was having with respect to utility work within the right-of-ways. We have an ordinance on the books. The ordinance didn't address communication companies because back in the day, communication companies had franchises. Now, communication companies don't have franchises anymore because of deregulation, but they've never been addressed. Now, as it stands right now, when communications come into the parish, or anybody doing underground work in the parish, they notify Homeland Security, but that ends there. They notify Homeland Security, you know, but there's no communication from Homeland Security to the parish. So basically, we're taking an ordinance that's been on the books and expanding it. We have had 2 Zoom calls with national communication companies. We actually went over the ordinance. We talked about our concerns in the first one. We went over our ordinance in the second one. It is different yet workable along the lines of what's going on in some of our neighboring parishes. And this thing's pretty simple. It basically requires every utility or communication company or their subcontractors shall notify the permit department in writing, which is a change, 48 hours to enter in the parish right away for the purpose of installing or repairing any utility. Written notification shall include but not limited to the following. And we went through what was currently in the ordinance, and the only thing we changed was that we want a completion date. We want an estimated completion date. Then we added B that said upon completion, you need to notify us. And the reason for that is so that the parish entities that are affected by that work can go back and reinspect it. What we've been having is the penetration of subsurface drainage, the penetration of sewer when it wasn't pressurized. You know, if you hit a utility line, or you know it pretty quick. You hit a water line, you know it quick. You hit a sewer force main, they show themselves early. You hit a gravity drainage line or a gravity sewer line, it might be years before it shows itself, and by that time they're sinkholes the size of pickup trucks. So the purpose of this is basically, I think the parish is acquired or in the process of acquiring a camera system to inspect subsurface drainage.
Well, we've got that in our budget, but here, since you and I spoke, I've reached out to Gravity Drainage One, which has a camera system now, which we do use and they do share with us. We're gonna kind of work together in an intergovernmental thing. They like borrowing our back truck. So in turn, I want to borrow their camera. They're gonna, just maybe save you a little bit of money during this time.
And typically, if the work's being done in Gravity One, they could look at your pipes just as easy as they can look at their pipe. You know what I'm saying? So we've got this. But in essence, I know Gravity 2 is in the process of acquiring one. Gravity 5, I think, from what I understand, is getting ready to acquire one. The sewer district has acquired or in the process of acquiring one. So that basically everybody that could be impacted could then be notified, and they could then go survey. And if there's a penetration, they'll know immediately about it. And they'll know who just worked in the area, and they'll be able to resolve it.
Back
Now,
on page,
with all
is this,
that
the
being
word is
said
still
here,
correct?
just to,
I wanna.
Go ahead.
I say, with all that being said, just to echo a little
It
bit of
says,
what
it
you
says
just
page
mentioned,
up here.
when you say
Needs
close
to
out
change.
the permitting, I mean, that's closing it out so it no longer exists, so nobody, we go out there and research, check, make sure everything's in place, if it belongs to us.
You see
And
on
then we can close out
she's gonna fix it.
Yeah.
we do that.
And it provides, it does provide, there was a question when we met in committee, last time, and we didn't have the answer, but we have the answer now. We asked about an emergency repair situation. There is a provision there that emergency repair situation can happen, and typically emergency repair situations are not long-term. They go in, fix it. Within 72 hours of the company making emergency repair, they will have to notify the permit department that they made an emergency repair.
That's correct.
And when they notify the permit department, that distribution by the permit department to everybody will let you know that the ticket's been opened and closed, and you can go inspect within your area. Now, look, is there some cost to the agencies that are doing the inspection? Absolutely, but they're protecting their assets, and that's kind of what government does. So, look, there's no cost that we've put in here associated with that, because that's an administrative issue. If the permit department chooses to charge a fee for that, which, there's been some discussion whether we will or won't, it's not addressed in here. Typically, I can tell you in Zachary, Central, and EBR, when those utility companies make notification to get those permits of that they're working, that there's no permit fee associated with it. However, if they do a particular road bore, something that currently requires a permit, there'll be a fee associated
Now,
with
once
it.
they require a permit, what happens then? Does it go to,
But the permit office will then notify you. We wanted to do this through planning. However, permitting has the computer system to do the tracking. So basically what's gonna happen, permit will they will notify permitting. Permitting will then tell planning,
planning or public works?
well, in our conversation, in talking to Miss Natalie, that planning had the ability to notify, to know where everybody in that ditch or.
We do, we have that available. I just want to make sure that it's specified in this ordinance.
It does not specify, because that's an administrative deal. I mean, we're trying to write the ordinance with relationship to what the utility company will have to do. But in essence, if in our discussions about how this would work, permit would notify planning, and then planning would then notify Ward
That's
2.
fine. That's
Planning
fine.
would then
I have
notify
no problem
water,
with that. Just as long as
DPW.
they know what they need to do.
That's
that's
I
what-
mean, that's kind of how that was the talk of in writing this thing and doing it, that's kind of where we came about. Because planning could then notify DPW and everybody else that was associated with, that had stuff in that right of way.
Well, I mean,
And if,
I've got the luxury to have both departments in that little column there.
and
So,
Sam, the administration can figure out how the implementation of the ordinance works. I mean, we're just trying to write the ordinance to make the utility and communication companies responsible to pull the permit. If the administration chooses to set up their own department, to make notification, that's within the purview of the administration. I think that's something that the administration's got to resolve. Y'all need to figure out who y'all want permitting notifying, and then how that goes. Typically, in the discussion that we talked about, that, permit would notify planning. Ideally, we were thinking that planning would be the person that was, we would have them issue the permit, but they have no ability to track when it starts and where it ends, and permitting does. So that's the reason that permitting's issuing the permit, and then planning was gonna kind of handle it from there. But that's an administrative issue. This deal here is just a way to address you know, having the utility or communication company come to the parish, let us know when they're working, and then let us know when they're done, or if there's an
That's the
emergency.
biggest thing.
Yeah.
And if there's an emergency, come to us and tell us that, you know, we worked 3 days ago and we're through with the project, and then we can then distribute to whoever is impacted by that, the ability to go look at their stuff. Because, you know, heck, have we even determined, you know, we've got that sinkhole in Audubon Lakes or whatever that deal is right off Kane Market, you know what I'm talking about? Did we ever figure out what that is? I mean, did we ever x-ray or spin the camera and figure out who penetrated what? We just still got a sinkhole, we just don't know what it
I
came
got
from.
3 or 4, 5 in the
No.
fountain blue, it's bad.
But
We
as-
gotta fix it.
As far as the ordinance goes, what we're trying to do, and just oversimplify it, we're just trying to lay out the structure on how utilities, companies have to interact with government.
Right.
We're not trying to say how government interacts with itself.
Exactly.
that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I agree.
mean,
So
yes,
do
go
we
ahead.
need to introduce
Yeah.
that?
Time out. For clarification, you said they have to notify within 72 hours, but the ordinance actually says within 3 working days. Did you want that changed, or?
Yeah, let's change it 3 working days. Well, I mean, because, yeah, okay, so if it's 3 working days, it's 3 working days, I think that makes it easier on the weekend. If there's an emergency on the
Right.
weekend, then they've got 3
Okay.
working days to make notification.
And it was already like that,
Which
so
one
that's
it is,
good.
3 business days, 3 government business days, 3 government working days?
Yeah, because they ain't open on Friday.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with 72 hours is you could have a Thursday at 6 o'clock emergency, and within 72 hours, government in a typical week is not open yet.
3 business days.
3 business days.
All right.
And then
It's already on there, right?
And then yeah, we're just changing the clarification from working day. I said 72 hours and thinking about how government is operating.
So we'll vote on it as amended?
No, we hadn't introduced it yet, so
I
she
thought
can
we
make
already
the,
on- Oh, it's just on, up
we're
for
gonna
introduction
introduce it tonight,
All right,
so-
you making a motion to introduce?
I'll make the motion to introduce.
Motion second, it don't matter.
Motion by Mr. Talbot, second by Mr. King. All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
All opposed, no. All right, we're good. All right, nothing else. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. King,
Second.
second by Mr. Harris. All in favor, say aye.
Uh,